There was one female deity that even the mighty Zeus dared not offend. Most people know Zeus as the king of the Greek gods. He defeated the Titans, ruled from Mount Olympus, hurled thunderbolts, punished gods and mortals, and seemed almost untouchable. But in the stories, he reconsidered his pursuit rather than challenge her. In Homer's Iliad, Zeus becomes furious with the god Sleep and goes after him. Sleep runs for protection, but not to Poseidon or Hades. He ran to the protection of Nyx, the goddess of night. Zeus decides it's not worth it. That has led to a popular modern claim that Zeus was afraid of Nyx. But is that actually what Homer says? The answer is more interesting than the meme. To understand it, we need to know what happened before Zeus defeated the Titans. In Hesiod's Theogony, one of our earliest surviving Greek accounts of the origins of the gods, the universe does not begin with Zeus. It begins with primordial realities. First comes chaos, then Gaia, the earth, Tartarus, the deep abyss, and Eros, the force of attraction and generation. From chaos come Erebus, the darkness, and Nyx, who was the night. Nyx is not merely a goddess who turns the lights off at the end of the day. In this early Greek conception, she is night itself, a fundamental part of the structure of existence. And night can be scary. The Titans can be defeated. Cronus can lose his throne. Atlas can be punished. Prometheus can be chained. But how do you overthrow night? How do you imprison darkness itself? That may help explain why Nyx occupies such an unusual place in Greek mythology. Hesiod gives her an extraordinary family. Without even naming a father, Nyx produces a host of powers that no ruler, no matter how mighty, can truly escape. Among her children are sleep and death. She also gives birth to doom, fate, dreams, misery, deception, old age, strife, and nemesis. In some cases, these are not simply characters with jobs. They are personifications of forces woven into mortal and divine existence. That brings us to Homer. In Book 14 of the Iliad, Hera wants to distract Zeus so the Greeks can gain an advantage in the Trojan War. Her plan requires Zeus to fall asleep. So she approaches Hypnos, the god of sleep, and asks him to do the job. Hypnos wants no part of it. He remembers the last time Hera convinced him to put Zeus to sleep. On that earlier occasion, Hera used Zeus's sleep to act against Heracles. When Zeus woke and realized what had happened, he was furious. According to Hypnos, Zeus began throwing gods around his palace and searched especially for him. Hypnos believed Zeus was going to hurl him out of heaven and into the sea. So he ran. And he ran to Nyx. This is where the story becomes remarkable. Hypnos says that Nyx saved him. Zeus was still enraged, but he stopped pursuing sleep because he did not want to do anything that would displease night. One translation says Zeus had awe of offending her. Another renders the idea more bluntly. Zeus did not dare to displease night. That is the ancient source behind the claim that Zeus feared Nyx. But Homer never gives us a scene where Zeus trembles before her, hides from her, or admits that she is stronger than he is. So saying, Nyx was the only god Zeus feared, goes beyond what the text actually tells us. What Homer does tell us is arguably stranger. Zeus is furious enough to threaten another god with destruction. His intended victim reaches Nyx, and Zeus decides that continuing the pursuit is not worth offending her. Why? Homer does not explain. There is another reason to take the episode seriously without overreading it. Homer and Hesiod are not writing a single, perfectly coordinated mythology. Greek religion never had one authorized scripture that settled every genealogy and every relationship between the gods. Different poets preserve different traditions. Yet both of these very early sources treat night as something ancient, formidable, and maybe unbeatable. Hesiod places her near the beginning of existence itself. Homer can invoke her in a story without stopping to explain why Zeus would hesitate before her. His audience apparently did not need a lengthy introduction to make the moment work. And consider what Zeus represents in these stories. This is the god who overthrew Cronus and helped establish a new cosmic order after the war with the Titans. He is the wielder of the thunderbolt, the enforcer of oaths and divine authority, and the figure other gods repeatedly have to reckon with. Hypnos knows exactly what Zeus can do. That is why he is terrified of repeating Hera's scheme. Nyx, however, functions as a refuge from that authority, not because Homer stages a battle and declares her the winner, but because Zeus himself draws a line. Among modern people, mythology usually boils down to power rankings. Who could beat whom? Who was strongest? Who was Zeus afraid of? The ancient story gives us something more interesting than a scoreboard. It gives us a limit that Zeus chooses not to cross. Maybe Zeus respected her immense age and status. Maybe Night possessed a power even Zeus was unwilling to test. Maybe the Greeks simply regarded certain primordial forces as operating outside the normal hierarchy of Olympus. It's hard to know which explanation is correct, but we can say something important. Nyx is not portrayed like an ordinary subordinate in Zeus's kingdom. Zeus rules the Olympians, but Night existed before Olympus. That is a very different kind of authority. Hesiod reinforces the strangeness of her position. Far below the familiar world of gods and men, near the terrible region of Tartarus, he describes the house of Night. There, night and day pass one another at the threshold, one entering as the other leaves. Nearby dwell sleep and death. It feels less like a royal court and more like the machinery of the cosmos. Night does not need a throne on Olympus because every evening the world enters her domain. And every god, including Zeus, exists inside that reality. That may be the key to understanding the primordial deities. Greek mythology is often described as a succession of generations. First the primordials, then the Titans, then the Olympians. But that description can be misleading. The Olympians replace the Titans as the dominant ruling generation. They do not replace the primordials. Gaia remains Earth. Uranus remains the sky. Tartarus remains the abyss. And Nyx remains night. The younger gods can fight over who rules creation, but the oldest powers are creation. Seen that way, Homer's brief story about Zeus and Nyx becomes much more than an odd piece of mythology. Zeus may be king, but kings rule within a world they did not create. There are forces older than kings, so maybe they're playing by someone else's rules. Was Zeus literally afraid of Nyx? We cannot prove that. The ancient text does not say, Zeus feared Nyx because she was stronger than him. What it does say is that an enraged Zeus pursued Sleep. Sleep fled to Night, and Zeus backed away rather than offend her. For one of the most powerful gods in Greek mythology, that is an extraordinary act of restraint. And perhaps that is why Nyx remains so fascinating. She does not need to challenge Zeus. She does not need to overthrow him. She does not need his throne. Zeus can rule the heavens, but sooner or later, even the heavens grow dark. Then we may finally see what Nyx is capable of.